That's awesome. All right, well, I think we're going to crank this up. So let me just thank everyone for coming. And as you join, as people join in, if you have any questions, just post them right there on the Facebook event. And I'll pass the questions on to Doug as we go. My name is John Williams. I'm the owner of Pack and Paddle. And we appreciate you being here. This is great. And Doug, thank you very much for doing the seminar. I appreciate the work you put in for preparing for this and getting ready to pass on this information. So I guess barring anything else, let's go ahead and make it happen.
Let's get it. Let's do it. I promise it will not be as long as my Ride the Bull seminar. That was a long seminar. So as I was saying, just a little bit about me, a little egomaniac slide here. I've been blessed to have won Fallen Tide twice. I mean, literally, I never could have imagined winning this event twice. I definitely am looking for the hat trick and to get it on the third time. The last time that I won it was most recently in 2020 on the CPR event. And I'll still say that it was supposed to be a Hobie qualifier, but it was during the dang COVID event or whatever was going on, and they pushed the qualifier to the next year. So I didn't get the Hobie qualifier that year, but it was fantastic. And Steve Lassard will be the one to tell you that I'm the only person that's ever won the Fallen Tide on both Highway 23 and Highway 1. So it's been great. And also been blessed to win the Star event 3 times in the kayak division and IFA tournament, as well as multiple slam tournaments between Lafayette Kayak Fishing Club and Bayou Coast tournament. But that's not really, to be an ego side of it. It just goes to show that I've put a lot of hard work into fishing, and it's really not about winning tournaments. It's about going out there and having a good time. And the one thing that I've learned is that you have to have a strategy going into these tournaments. And the only reason that I have a good strategy is because I sat down with my brother and Jeff Robinson and Steve Lassard and Butch Ridgedale and other anglers out there over the last 10 years. And the night before, the week before, and I've talked about where are we going to fish. We've lied to each other about where we're going to fish. We continue to lie to each other about where we're going to fish.
As recently as last weekend.
And we're good friends, and we lie to each other about where we're going to fish. Even when we're fishing, we lie to each other about where we're fishing.
So Doug, since you're talking about lying, Jonathan Carter wants to know where's the big trout at?
Yeah, this isn't going to be a session about where the fish are. The fish are moving at this time of year. So the reality is about putting together a game plan, and when you have that game plan, being flexible enough during that game plan to have a backup plan and changing that plan during your fishing schedule. But my point on talking about it is you have to have a network of anglers that you work with over a period of time, and building that camaraderie of and that relationship to feel comfortable enough lying to them and not getting angry at each other when you lie to each other, because you're going to learn even though you're lying to each other. And that sounds stupid.
Yes, it does.
It really does. But you learn from each other through those little lies, because every now and then you do tell the truth to each other.
All I gotta say, Doug, is you have to be an optimist to be an angler. I say that all the time, and I can't help but thinking that right now.
It's true. you do have to be an optimist, and uh, you pick up little tidbits along the way from each other, and uh, and the tips and tricks that when you're talking to each other really start to shine through, and you start to read between the lines of the years of the tournaments, and you go, well, wait a minute, he came through this. Now, my brother will not trust anything that anybody says, no matter you tell him the truth or not. He'll never believe you, whatever you tell him. So you could tell him point blank the absolute truth, and he'll think that you're absolutely lying to him. So so you can tell him whatever you want, and he won't believe you. But others along the way here, as you're going through this, the point that I'm trying to get to is put together a game plan and put together a network that you're working with, and it's as you're putting together your plan for your tournaments, you're going to create a network of friends and relationships that it's not going to matter whether or not you've won that tournament or not. I have lost way more tournaments than I have won along the way. And a great example is this past weekend, I won my first tournament in a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And I was getting frustrated, but I never gave up inside of that. So, and I have to thank John for being one of my sponsors, or my sponsor, and supporting me with the Hobie fishing team and backing me with the Pack and Paddle. So thank you, John. So, so this tournament is, this and the Slamboree and all slam tournaments out there are one of the greatest challenges, because the 3 fish species is just a difficult thing to accomplish, and you've got a large geographic area to cover. So when you're putting together your challenge, your strategy, you have to look at the geography. And if you haven't been down to LA1 in a while, it's changed. The storms have absolutely changed it. And I'm not just talking about the camps. I'm talking about the environment around basins and the erosion that is taking place. Talking about the lack of grass that is in the areas around Catfish Lake and the northern bodies, the erosion that is taking place, and the ramps that used to be in good condition are in bad conditions now. I'm talking about when you go down Highway 1 along LA1 on Grand Isle, what used to be like a 2 foot of rocks to launch over on the north side of Highway 1 are now 5 to 10, maybe 15 foot of rocks that you have to push over. So all of those conditions have changed. So if you're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to go launch the way that I used to launch, that's not the condition anymore. So you want to get down there at least a day early to think about this. So that's a key part. The other thing that you want to think about is is that fishing north and fishing south are very much different conditions as well. And the sheer number of anglers that fish falling tide, if you've not fished this event, but I know that most people have fished this event, because that's why we all look forward to it, is that there's a lot of pressure in the areas. And people hear tales that, oh, I hear the fish are inside of Catfish Lake, or I hear the fish are inside of Basons, or I hear the fish are inside of Elmer's, or whatever area that go inside. And then all of a sudden 30 people go show up inside of one little area that's inside of it. Well, that puts a lot of pressure in that particular launch area. And if you're hearing those type of things, then you need to be cognizant of it and think about that as part of your strategy going into it. So that's where that pre-fishing comes into play. If you see a lot of pressure inside of that area, then you need to realize that, hey, has that area been worn out the day before going into it, especially if it's reds. So have all those reds been hooked up onto going into it? Flounder, the same thing, going into those areas. So you may want to look for areas that have a lot less pressure going into those areas. And you may want to travel further distances inside when you're launching inside of the areas. So the other thing that is what I'll give you some insight into this past weekend that we found. For whatever reason, the slots are harder to find right now in the lower part of the LA1. So the unders are easy, and the bull reds, the very big bull reds, are easy to find. The slots very difficult to find. So that may mean that the slots may be further up north inside of that area that's inside of it. So it may be fishing 2 locations that are associated with it. Flounder seem to be plentiful. And when I say plentiful, we're not talking about West Louisiana plentiful. We're finding flounder, but they're in transition, and we're finding flounder, but not hundreds of them like on the west side. That's inside of it. Out of the 26 people that fished the Slamboree, there were 3 flounder that were caught inside of it, or 3 flounder that were turned in inside of that tournament. But they're in transition. So there will be flounder that are going to be caught inside of it, but 2 weeks from now, the movement of them is going to be there. I personally like flounder in the middle of LA1 as far as a location, and I said I'm not going to talk about locations, but that's where my personal preference is with them. And then again, trout this time of year, they're here one day and gone the next inside of it. And that's again what we saw during the Slamboree inside of it. So those are going to be the challenges that we're going to face inside of this tournament. But what we're going to see is that with this tournament, like we always see, is individuals that are going to need to fish up north looking for that perfect slot red and that 8-pound redfish, right? So they're in it to win it, and they may be looking for all 3 fish. The problem with fishing up north is that if you're trying to get all 3 fish up north, it's a difficult thing to do because it's harder. There are flounder that are up north, but it's more difficult to get up there, all 3 of the category. The good thing is that the trout are in transition to get up to the northern areas of the Catfish Lake and Basins area. That's inside of the play. And the harder part is where we'll see probably more anglers are going to be down in the Leeville area, all the way to the Elmer's Island area, all the way to the the middle of the island with the Danny Ray launch fishing up here in the islands back behind the island, depending on the weather that goes into play. And with all of these launches that come into play, I think that what you'll see is good trout fishing that comes into play, picking up here and there flounder, like I mentioned, that goes into play, with the challenges being the reds. You'll find reds, but maybe just not that perfect red that you would find up in the top that goes into place. So with this, knowing each launch is going to be the key part is going to be knowing each launch. The launches have definitely changed since the last time that you were down there, and you want to know how to get in and out of those launches easy. So example being, if you're launching in Golden Meadow, you have to take time because you have to go over the levee, and it's a walk to and from your car. And you don't think that 5 to 10 minutes makes a difference. But when you're pressed for time and you're having to get down to weigh in at Bridgeside, that 5 to 10 minutes is a big difference that goes into play. The other thing is, if you're launching at Golden Meadow, Catfish Lake, going through that maze, that's a big paddle that you have to take into consideration as well. So it's a good place to launch in the morning, where you are paddling in the morning and you can launch before lines in. So you may want to do a 30 to 45 minute paddle in the morning and burn that time. So you're not having to burn that time during the day and wasted paddle time twice inside of it. So again, those are the type of things that you want to take into consideration of what's that paddle time in and out from that launch type of environment. Whereas if you're launching at the Leeville public launch, you can be up towards the Lake Jesse area in just a matter of a couple of minutes, or fishing some of the islands up on the west side over there in 15-20 minutes, whereas you're still paddling up in the Catfish Lake and Basons area type of thing. And then you want to know your travel distance as well. So these are all the things that you want to go through, those mental motions literally the night before. And I'm going to give you an example. And this is one of those things where I haven't fished in before yesterday's tournament, or this past weekend's tournament. I hadn't been fishing, probably saltwater fishing, in 3 months, I think, maybe longer than that. And I talked to Butch, and he lied to me, because he said they were fishing in one area, but they weren't catching anything. And they were fishing in another area and they were catching fish. And I said, "Oh, I know what I can do. I'm going to go fish I'm going to go fish up in Catfish Lake. I didn't say Catfish Lake out loud to myself, but that's what I was mentally thinking. I'm going to go fish out in Catfish Lake. I'm going to launch from there. I've got a good spot there." And I went through all the mental motions of launching from that location and where I was going to go, and like how I was going to paddle there, and just like drilling it through my head while I was getting my gear ready. And then just before I was going to bed, I said, "You know what? I need to map this out." And right when I went to map it out, I said, "Oh, crap. I'm thinking of Cocodrie." and like I literally, I had the wrong place in my head. And I realized, oh, wait a minute, Catfish Lake is that place where I have to zigzag through everything. And there's no way I can go through this. And I had to completely change my mindset. And then I started doing the math on everything. And I said, I can't do what I wanted to do from a time perspective because of where weigh-in was. And that's when I started going through those motions. And this is what you have to do, is you have to go take like base-ons to bridge side is 44 minutes, you know, and then you have to add another 5 to 7 minutes for the toll bridge. Or you have to take Catfish Lake to Leeville launch is 15 minutes. So why do you do this? I've not ever fished a slam tournament that did not require me to change a location at least twice. You have to, and I mean, maybe some other guys have fished slam tournaments where they can catch it all in the same location, but most slam tournaments require you to change locations twice, or at least one time inside of it. And I find Grand Isle, the way that the fishery is, no matter where you launch, you need to change locations at least once to be able to find that winning red, winning trout, and winning flounder. I'm also an impatient fisherman too. So, and I'm not saying that they're not in the same area. I'm just saying for me, that's just the way that it is. That's inside of it. So just keep that into those things into consideration as you're going through this.
Doug, what's the problem with? Is the problem with redfish down south that they're too big right now?
The problem with they're having big flood tides coming in, and it's pushing those big bull reds into that area. And the other problem that runs into with the reds is for whatever reason the slot reds don't seem to be in there either. I hate to say it, either we've overfished the slot reds. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's the case. But one of the things is that the reds that are in that area are always really skinny reds, because we don't have like the grass area down there where they just sit down there and they get fat. I think because it's broken islands, and this is just my theories, because it's broken islands and it's on the Gulf. I think they just are transition. They come in and they just get washed out to the Gulf and they come back in or something like that. So they don't just seem to hang out like they do further up north, where they just kind of hang out there and get fat for a long time before they transition out of those areas. So, and I'm definitely not a biologist or a redfish expert. So. But they're always real thin down there for whatever reason. So the other thing that comes into play is, and this is the $1 billion question, right? What do you target first? You know, you wake up in the morning and you go, and I'm going to go for my trout first. Oh, I'm going to go for my redfish first. Oh, I'm going to go for my flounder first, or you know, or vice versa. And everybody every night is always going, which one do you go for first? And it's it's a whole lot of debate on what you feel more comfortable with in targeting first, and a lot depends on the conditions that are around. And a lot of people will go after the fish that they're most comfortable targeting first, and then they save their flounder for last. That is what I see the vast majority for. They go, let me go knock out the speck and the red first, because I can just hammer those, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the day flounder fishing. And then there's others that just go, let me go get the flounder, and bycatch will be the red or the trout that's inside of it. for me, on an ideal day, so this would be, and it's not going to happen because it's fallen tide and it's a Bayou Coast tournament. So we'll never have this happen for us. we're gonna have hurricane force winds and it's gonna be raining. But this is the ideal day for us. Would be that we have a morning temperature of 67 degrees. We have an incoming tide until 8 a.m. and we have 5 to 10 mile an hour southwest winds, which means that it would be warming after a week of 65-degree evenings, right? How many would like that type of a day for falling tide? Well, we're going to have, I looked at the prequel of the tide calendar, and we're supposed to have an incoming tide of till noon, I think, is what our incoming tide is supposed to look like that day. But it all depends on what the wind looks like on what our tide will actually do. So if we had this type of a day, I would go and jump on a trout first, and I'd consider fishing more north for the trout, because they would be in transition because of that cooling weather, and fishing topwater baits, and slow down my retrieve as the water is cooled. But I wouldn't fish all the way north. I'd fish maybe higher Leeville area, maybe all the way up to the Catfish Lake area. And then I would I'd go after my flounder, and I'd go after my flounder thinking that I would be also looking for my redfish. So, because when you're flounder fishing, you have a good chance of catching a redfish at the same time with it. And I would be looking probably at that mid zone inside of that Leeville area. I'd be throwing gulp, and then I'd rotate between chartreuse and white. I will tell you, every flounder that I've ever caught out there, that's a lie. The majority of flounder that I've caught in a tournament has been on gulp. The other bait that I catch on is the tsunami. So you can't go wrong with the tsunami. And I would fish for the flounder, like I said, because of that red. Chances are I would probably catch a smaller red than a bigger red, but I would be looking for that. And then if I caught the trout and the flounder, and let's say I caught him in the Leeville area, and I caught them really early, say at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, and that was what my game plan was going into it. That's what my strategy was in the morning. Then I would be loading up, and I would be jumping up to Catfish Lake or Basons and going to look for that heavy slot red. I wouldn't waste any time whatsoever to get up there and just jump up there so that I could get that slot red and get back down to the weigh-in. If it was past 11 o'clock in the morning, then I would stay south and be looking for a red back down in the Leeville, Fouchon area, and targeting those reds down inside of that particular area that's inside of it. If the weather was really, really bad weather, then I probably would start off flounder fishing and looking for that flounder, looking for a bycatch of trout and a redfish to begin my day with, and just trying to hammer out getting all three of the species with a bycatch of off of a gulp fish to begin the day with. And I'd be really looking, if it had a north wind and it was a flood tide, I definitely would not be starting red fishing to begin with, because the reds would be all up inside of that marsh. I'd be waiting for that water to drain out, and I'd be waiting for the redfish at the end of the day type of environment for me. So that's kind of the strategy that I would be looking at going into my specs. I also try to save, if it's I try to almost save my speckled trout for towards the end of the day, if it's not going to be a super hot day for me, because I like to spec fish more than I like to red fish if it's going to be a really difficult fishing day. Uh, so I talk about pre-fishing a lot, and I give Sean and Stannis a hard time about pre-fishing a lot. So Sean's probably sitting there going, "Oh, here it comes." So not on the research aspect of this, but so pre-fishing shouldn't be about fishing, in my opinion. Pre-fishing should be about scouting, and what you're doing is you're going out and you're scouting water conditions, you're scouting other anglers. That doesn't mean you're following other anglers. It means you're looking for pressure. You're looking to see where other people are. I mean, you're following other people. I mean, you're trying to encroach on other people. You're not spying on other people. It means you're just looking at where the pressure is. You're doing the drive-by on the parking lots to see how many cars are inside of parking lots, things like that. So the world's best at doing that is Benton. Benton's probably the best at being able to see who's where and who's in what particular areas. You want to look and see what conditions have changed since the last time that you were there inside of it. So you're definitely scouting. What that means is you're not sitting in your spots. You're not sitting there hammering your area that you normally would sit there and hammer inside of it. You're not trying to take fish home to cook for mama. You're literally just scouting the area and moving along. Maybe you're exploring new areas that you've never explored before inside of it. And then you are wetting your line. So you're cycling through your baits. You already have your baits chosen, and you've got your dark color, your light colored, and your favorite baits that you work through. Maybe you want to experiment with a new bait, but this you're taking the tournament serious. So you're working the baits that you already know. So you're looking to see what's going to work on tournament day and what's not going to work on tournament day. This isn't a time to be screwing around with a whole bunch of new stuff. This is the time to be playing with what's going to work tomorrow and what's not going to work tomorrow. So then this is the one where I give Sean and other guys a hard time. This isn't a time to be hooking fish and ripping lips. This is a time where you want to bend hooks and don't use hooks, especially for flounder. And y'all are sitting there going, what is he talking about? Flounder will grab a gulp without a hook, and they will hold on to it. Just don't rip it out of their mouths. Just let them hold on to it. And I'm telling you right now, I do it all the time. You can pull them to within a foot of your boat. You can pull them almost out of the water, and you can see how big that flounder is. I swear on my life, I do it all the time. You can see how big that flounder is, and then they'll shake loose. And you know what they do? They swim right back to where they came from. And what do they do when they swim right back to where they came from? They're right there 9 times out of 10 for you to go, because flounder are not very bright fish. I don't know if you knew this or not. They're not very bright fish. They're right there for you to go and cast at tomorrow, as long as somebody else didn't see where you cast it. So you can go back and cast in that same general area, 5 foot in that area, if the conditions are the same, and probably hook that flounder tomorrow. So why hook it on a Friday or on a Thursday when you can get them on a Saturday and have your flounder? So don't, I tell people that all the time, but all the time I see them on Facebook posting a picture of their flounder that they caught on Friday that they're not going to catch on Saturday. So that's a strategy. Anyway, get a hit, mark the fish, and move along. What I mean by that is, if you are using hooks, catch the fish, move. Don't sit there and try to catch 3 or 4 other fish in that area. Why? You're trying to win a tournament, right? You're not trying to catch fish on Fridays. So I'm a little passionate about this here. So don't do it. I mean, I can't say it any other way. So no need to. Now there's an exception to this. If you're not going to fish that spot, and it's Benton's spot, or it's Steve Lassard's spot, or it's Butch Ridgedale's spot, now just sit there and rip some lips, because they won't be able to catch those fish tomorrow. So I'm joking. Don't do that. Don't be mean to other anglers. That's a bad joke on my end. So
Advanced technique. That's advanced technique.
yeah, that's a bad technique. So I would never do that to anybody. Oh, so, and the other thing is be disciplined. So if you're sight fishing, that's another one. So this is a logical one. If you're out there in the marsh and you're pre-fishing and you see the perfect slot red on a Friday, why would you possibly cast at it? Because it's right there in the marsh. It's in a pond that only you know about. So don't cast at it. It'll be there tomorrow. Just leave it. Let it swim away. You already know how big it is. So if you find a school, don't clobber it. Just let it be. And but if you are out there and you do find fish, you could rotate baits and see what does work. And by all means, for all of us that are in the area that may be around you, don't post on Facebook, especially if it's got markings around what you are around. So or at least wait until Sunday to post on Facebook your big catch that you got. So these are all strategic things that you should be thinking about with your strategy. So all right, so this is one of those areas where I don't necessarily practice what I preach, but I do for Falling Tide. I don't necessarily do it for all of my tournaments, but there's I talked about this a bit. I definitely do this. I make 2 to 6 moves during every tournament that I go to. So what that means is I'm going to use the word crap, the less crap, which is tackle, gear, equipment, the less stuff that I take with me, the easier it is for me to move. And this past tournament, the Slamboree over the weekend, like I said, I hadn't fished in 3 months and I hadn't pared down my equipment. I took way too much stuff with me and I was tangled up in my kayak. I got tangled up in the mangrove trees. I mean, it was just a cluster everywhere I turned. And I mean, I felt it. I just felt so disorganized. I do bring on tournament days anywhere from 5 to 7 rods with me, especially for slam tournaments. And the reason I do that is because I have my trout rods already rigged up. I have my redfish rods already rigged up, and I have my flounder rods already rigged up. So that way I'm not sitting there messing around, changing out bait and lines for flounder. I'm not messing around, changing out for redfish, changing out for trout. I've got my top waters ready to go. I've got my line ready to go for flounder. I've got my lightweight ready to go. And I'll tell you, even though I use lightweight line for my flounder rigs, I've brought in bull reds on lightweight line, my flounder lightweight line before. So I'm not afraid to hook up a redfish on my lightweight flounder gear. I just know that I'm not going to horse that redfish in the way that I would if I had it on my heavier weight redfish gear. So
Hey, Doug,
yeah,
Chris Arsenault wants to know, do you make up leaders to swap out or just baits?
I just do baits, and I have my leader already pre-tied, and I do like a 12-pound leader on my flounder rig, a 15-pound leader on my trout rig, and a 20-pound leader on my redfish rigs. So, and then I carry, when I'm not, or when I am pre-fishing, I carry 50 to 75 baits. And my friends that know me go, he's lying. He carries 75 to 150 baits with him. So, but I went with 50 to 75 for the slide.
And Doug, do you use the quick clips to, what do
I
you call
do.
it?
I do. I use Greg's Twitch clips for most of my baits to change out. I typically, with the 7 rods, I typically do not change out many lures though. I typically have my skitter walkers tied on, my gulp tied on, and a creature bait tied on for my red fishing.
Okay.
So, and then on tournament day, I have 10 to 15 baits inside of two trays that are alternative baits in addition to the 7 rods that I carry. And those are all just backup baits in case I decide to change out something, or in case a bull red or shark takes my skitter walkers that I have.
Are you putting 7 rods on the boat, or are you just leaving some of them in the car, and depending on the area you're in, you take?
I carry all 7 rods with me until, and when I catch fish, like if I catch my redfish, then I'll leave and I change locations, then I leave those rods in my car as I change locations.
Got it.
Great question. Yeah. So you always have to have a backup plan. This was Fall and Tide 2020, and that big flounder that I caught, that was just at 20 inches or 19 3/4 inches. He jumped up, and right after I took my picture, he broke my hog trough board. And luckily, I had a second board, a second white hog trough board with me because I carried two of them for whatever. I just said I need to carry two of them just in case one breaks, and I had that plan. So plan for your original plan to fail and fail fast and move on. I will tell you, there has not been a tournament that I have won that the morning has not started off as a total cluster bleep. I mean, something has gone wrong. It's just something, it's just disastrous. Like a board breaking inside of this happened with me. Rods have gotten completely tangled up. Drive has messed up on me. The back of my rudder has dropped, hasn't dropped. I mean, something has happened inside of it. And whatever happens, you just have to maintain your composure and recognize that just happened, accept it, not get frustrated with it, take a couple of deep breaths and move on. I mean, and I'm talking like the things that have happened to me on tournament days have been things that I've wanted to just absolutely call quits. And I just said, nope, and just powered on. So you just have a plan and you just power through it. So if you've ever experienced that or you experience it, just remember it's a long day ahead of you and you can just keep moving on. And I know I have my very first fallen tide when I caught my flounder in the last 5 minutes of the tournament and got to weigh in within I think 90 seconds of the time being cut off on it. So use every minute that you have inside of the tournament with it. So best tournament wins for me have been like with the biggest fails inside of it. So always have those backup plans inside of it. And my last slide inside of this is I believe heavily in fish karma. So on average, on a fishing trip, I remove 3 to 5 items of litter for every trip that I go out fishing. And I could remove 30 items for every trip, but at least I take 3 to 5 items. And it's just when they float by me, I just pull them out of the water. And for tournaments, I still remove those items. And I'll give you an example. In the Slamboree, this bottom image here, this 150-pound braid I caught with my jig, and I went to pull it out of the water, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, it'll just take me a minute. And I started wrapping it around this branch here, and started wrapping around. And like 3 minutes into this thing, I was like, well, this is taking a little bit longer. And after about 10 to 15 minutes, I finally got all of this braid out of the water. And I'm like, well, okay, that's 15 minutes that I will not get back in this tournament, but it's fish karma. I did the right thing. I got it out of the water. I did not have a fish in the boat, and this was about 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sorry, I had my flounder in the boat, and But it was a grind. I couldn't find a trout, I couldn't find a redfish, I couldn't find anything going into the end of the day. And once I got in, I went up the trail here, and 5 minutes, not 5 minutes after putting this into the boat, boom, I caught my redfish. And it wasn't a very big redfish, but I caught a redfish. And I was like, oh, there's my fish karma. And then about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later on, boom, I catch a trout. And I'm like, well, get my slam. There's my fish karma. So I'm like, that's exactly what I needed inside of it. And I go, 50 to 60% of the time that I pull stuff out of the water, I get my fish karma inside of it. And I just say, I highly recommend it. Taking care of it, taking care of another fisherman, taking care of the fish. We're going to have over 100 people fishing falling tide out there. We're going to be catching redfish. We don't need, if you've already got your redfish and you catch a smaller redfish, we probably don't need to take that redfish out of the water. It can be returned unless you really need to eat another redfish. We can return redfish back into the water that we don't need to have. That's fish karma for us. So catch and release is a good thing for us kayak anglers when we have over 150 people on the water over a 2-3 day period of time. That's a good thing for us to do. So I'll leave it with that, and I hope that y'all found some value out of this. I hope there were a couple of nuggets that you think of with your strategy. And with that, John, if there's any questions, I'll leave everybody with some tight lines.
Great. Thank you, Doug. There's Jonathan has a question, and if anybody has any additional questions, this is the time to go ahead and type them in and I'll relay it on to Doug. But Jonathan is asking, when do you know to move on from a species?
Oh, great question. So with a flounder, immediately, once you have a flounder in the boat and it's over 11 inches or 12 inches, whatever the minimum is, I think it's 11 inches for fallen tide, you move on. With a trout, if you're in a school of trout and if you're just catching the same size over and over and over and they're not being upsized, and you've given it 15-20 minutes and they're all the same size, you just move on. Don't give it over I would say 20 to 30 minutes. That's inside of it. You don't want to go beyond that. That's with it. And then with the red, I'm saying that you go up to probably 24 to 25 inches and you move on. And then the goal is to get all 3 species. Once you get all 3 species, then you upgrade, and you want to upgrade reds first. Why? Reds are where the most weight are. Then you want to upgrade trout, and then you want to upgrade flounder. That's the sequence of your upgrades to go in place, unless you know that there's a hammer trout inside of that area or another area that you're at.
Great. Awesome. Well, a few people have said thanks and great job. And it looks like people have enjoyed it, Doug. I really appreciate you doing the seminar. This was great. Let's do it again sometime, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And good luck to everybody at Fallen Tide this weekend. Y'all stay safe. And I hope y'all have a great tournament this weekend. Thanks a lot, Doug.
All right. Fantastic.
All right, y'all have a good night.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You want me to end it?
Yeah, please. I'm not sure on the,
Yeah, I'm a host. So